Hey there, Story Manifestor. I'm so glad you're here. I'm Leah Falls, writer and actor, and today we're talking about another toxic trope that is commonly embraced. Should I choose love or should I choose my career? Let's jump in. So what's the trope? At the heart of this trope, the protagonist has to choose between a successful career and a loving family or fulfilling love life. Oftentimes the protagonist goes for the career first and then realizes the error of their ways. When the protagonist is a woman, the person that goes after the career is a woman, this trope often overlies with the bitchy boss trope. And in that case, a baby or a guy makes her realize the value of family and why it's the most important thing in life. I have, however, seen it with protagonists of all genders, so it's not solely another variant of reinforcing all gender roles. The story's main conflict is usually career-based, and choosing the family or relationship or love is usually the solution. Examples for that would be A Devil Wears Prada, or Yesterday, the Beatles movie that came out 2 years ago now, or a lot of Hallmark movies. Where did it come from? I am seriously considering removing this section because every time I start my research, it's not going very well. The internet was not super helpful about the origin of this trope. In fact, I just ended up looking up Barbara Stanwyck for half an hour for no reason. Gosh, just look at her. Not helpful, so I got queer-distracted, but my guess is that the trope first came into play when love marriages became an option and the question was whether to marry for love or for societal status and stability. Especially at the moment with everyone watching Bridgerton or having just watched Bridgerton, I feel like that's sort of the first time period where we're talking about whether trope can even really exist. Back in the 19th century, people started gaining more autonomy and their lives weren't solely controlled by the church or the crown, so they actually started being able to have those choices. Also, society was changing quite rapidly, similar to in our, recent history. A lot has changed, but in the 19th century a lot was changing as well with industrialization and revolutions. So even a former secure marriage wasn't necessarily secure, so those insecurities came into consideration when it made love marriages more possible and more attractive when stability wasn't necessarily completely secured. Hence, people could consider love as a factor in marrying, when previously it really wasn't that connected to marriage. Now, this perspective comes from an upper class, historically speaking. The working class both had less and more autonomy on this matter, because they might have had more to say in who they were choosing to marry. We're talking post-abolition and serfdom. But an illustrious career or rising social ranks wasn't really an option for them either. So when we're talking about, it's not just about society, it's also about love, it's a very classist view of history. Novels like Daniel Defoe's Roxana or Samuel Richardson's very problematic Pamela Virtue Rewarded, which is the first recorded English novel, unfortunately, brought the idea of romantic love to a wider audience. So people outside of, within families and within friends could actually see that, these are universal things that you can strive for in marriages. Now, obviously, love has always existed, and love in marriages and love, like long-term love relationships, have always existed. People didn't just in the 18th century discover what love was. Oh my, that's quite a discovery you got there. Why did Da Vinci not find it? And if you want more on that, look at a lot of noblemen and their mistresses and look at those relationships. Not all of them, I'm saying here, are consensually love relationships, but there are a good chunk of them. So we're solely talking about this idea of love becoming a factor in marriage. While I couldn't find the origin of the love versus career trope, at least from a European-centric view, it seems to have always been tied to marriages. So, because back then, career would be more the social rank and the stability, and love. And back then it was a real question, if you would want to to have that security or have that love. It had to be a question. Sometimes they were combined, but it was much rarer. Now we know why this question used to be important. Do you want love or do you want wealth? But let's look at our modern times and talk about why it no longer benefits us. What's wrong with it? Number one of my biggest issues, it limits us. It offers a dichotomy of two cut-out life templates, love or career, and it requests of us to choose one of them. This hardly reflects the complexities of modern life, and yet we believe in it and mentally place ourselves in those categories. I'm no different. In my early 20s, I started calling myself more a career girl because I felt like I had to pick one of those cut-out templates and cut-out options. But to choose between love and career, we first have to all agree how those two options look like, and that's where the problem already starts. In stories and in books and in movies, the situations may slightly vary, but those two outcomes look very similar. So if you would just swap characters, the plot would still somewhat work. The trope isn't just telling us that we have to choose, it's telling us how those two options look like. If we do choose family, some chaos and some difficulties are allowed, but ultimately our family or our partner is supposed to completely fulfill us. There's no wiggle room for individual pursuits still because we have chosen this. I know a story only shows us a slither of a character's life, but this trope encourages trading all former life aspects for this one value, so we don't see the nuances. Ultimately, this narrative scares us. It poses the question of what we value more, love or career, and the more often it's repeated, and it is repeated a lot in modern storytelling, the more we internalize it. And the problem is that from this level of fear, we don't see all the options, so we will make fear-based decisions. Which brings me to point 2 in why it's problematic. It separates the two. Why are we separating love and career in our modern times in the first place? 3 toxic messages come with this separation. Time equals close relationship. Supporting your partner's growth isn't as important as staying close to each other, and the two have to be separate. Love and career do not mix. Let's look at the time issue. Time seems like an easy way to quantify a relationship, but the problem is that if you're not aligned with your partner and don't support each other, no amount of time can fix that. Some long-distance relationships thrive and some close-quarter relationships shrivel, and neither circumstance gives us an insight or a hint on how in love the people are. I mean, after a year of quarantine, you probably realize that too, that time isn't that clear-cut. And trust me, I'm not saying that loved ones shouldn't spend a lot of time together. I'm your needy queer over here, so... But what actually matters in a relationship is to choose to and to consciously spend the time together. So if a partner works all day at a job they love and then comes home and shares that passion and shares their experiences and listens to their partner's experiences, that's a beautiful connection. And I do believe the trope kind of fails to see that time isn't the only deciding factor here. Exciting factor, it can be an exciting factor, but deciding factor. If two partners are in the same place all day, but don't progress past small talk and take no interest into the other one's interior life, that's not closeness. The same applies to the child-parent relationship. When a dad, for example, in a movie works all the time and then suddenly realizes that his children are what matters the most to him, the trope tells us that time is the solution, the time spent, but it's not. Focus is. Focus is the problem. And focus is also the solution. In those stories, the dad doesn't focus on his children enough, either because of a lack of energy or a lack of interest. Ideally, a chosen career should energize you. So the story should be more about how to funnel that energy back into, that fulfillment back into the children. It's about taking an active interest into their lives, their feelings, their opinions, and that's what builds the connection and the closeness, which would be a really interesting conflict to explore. How can a dad who's very one-minded split his focus from career to his children? And that's the question here. It's not about time, it's about how can you balance those two in a focus and in a mental space. But instead, this toxic trope shows us that giving up one will ultimately better the other. So cutting hours will mean that you become a better dad. but it's not that simple. When it comes to mothers, this idea is even more simplified. If she gives up work to raise a child, she chooses motherhood. But every mother chooses motherhood. If you choose to have and keep a child, you choose motherhood. And here's the thing, career moms are still seen as a detriment to the child, and there's two really big issues with that. A, it's classist. Working moms on the poverty line never had that choice to begin with. So whenever we shame women for choosing their career, we're condemning those women despite them not having any choice. So we're condemning them for their circumstance. And B, a woman who has a successful career that lights her up shows her daughter what's possible for her. So it's actually a really good thing. Apart from conscious connective time spent together, watching your parents live their fullest life and embrace their true authenticity is the best thing for children. So no, time does not equal good parenthood, and it does not equal closeness, no matter what the trope wants us to believe. This feeds to the supporting your partner isn't as important as staying close to each other and nurturing that closeness, which in the trope, oftentimes the whole conflict is solved and the relationship is fixed when the character chooses the partner. But that doesn't actually resolve that the partner was so unsupportive until that point. Making your needs clear is vital for any relationship. But in a trope, I often see that the partner projects their needs onto the character. This is getting confusing. I'm going to say partner for the protagonist's partner and character for the character who is making the choice between love and career, because they're not necessarily the protagonist, but to differentiate those two. So for one reason or another, the partner needs more time with the character. Needs to spend more time with the character, or can't really handle the character's success. And instead of making that clear that that's, how they're feeling, they often make it about the character. How does that look like? The character is losing themselves. The character is no longer recognizable. The character loves their career more than they love the partner. The character. No. This is abusive behavior, and it's romanticized by the trope. This isn't about the partner missing the character. This is about the partner not supporting the character's choices and blaming them for it. It's manipulation.
I wouldn't care if you were out there pole dancing all night, as long as you did it with a little integrity. You used to say this was just a job. You used to make fun of the runway girls. What happened? Now you've become one of them.
That's absurd.
Hey, that's okay, that's fine. Just own up to it. And then we can stop pretending like we have anything in common anymore.
We haven't finished the conversation.
Well, we have. We have. Unless... live for Lime Street at 11:14 on a Friday. Unless you choose to stay.
Jack, you have to get on the plane. What are you still doing?
Can't stay today. I've got to do the late show tomorrow, and I've got to do the marketing meeting and meetings. It's ridiculous.
And that was your chance.
And I gotta say, I especially saw that in the movie yesterday. That movie actually inspires this whole trope thing. So if you want to see that in action, give it a watch. The solution to this problem is oftentimes reverse growth. The character is pressured to become who they used to be. And that's a really painful base for any relationship. And that's why if we put the trope aside, it's actually very exciting to explore how two partners grow with each other through careers and through different ways their lives taking them. That's where, storytelling can be really interesting, how they're growing in different directions and yet together. Instead of trying to keep each other stagnant. We don't want that. Let's not shortcut that exciting development by concluding that true love is about staying in one place. And to the last messages giving that you can't mix love and career, why not? Wouldn't it be great if two characters support each other and help each other in every way they can in the career that they're pursuing? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm understanding that conflict is a really important part of storytelling, like the most important part of storytelling, but is it the most important part of storytelling? I don't know, characters? Anyway, But what the conflict is and what the messages we're walking away from are two different things. When using the trope, make sure it's solely the conflict, not the message. Because what we want to say is that love extends to every aspect of a person, not just the aspects that are directly benefiting me. And number 3, why this trope is problematic: success is either vilified or all-consuming. This ties in closely to what we just talked about. When a character does get successful, they get swept up by it. They lose who they really are, because who they really are would obviously not care about work. And that's all fine and good, but doesn't society depend on people getting swept up by their professions? Are we supposed to believe that doctors, journalists, directors, musicians, business owners, they all live loveless or incomplete lives and have lost who they really are? Right, but if they work in a creative or humanitarian industry, that pursuit is the only love they need. That is their love, no family necessary, right? With that way of thinking, we're expecting people to live incomplete lives, to only explore one aspect of themselves and the world they're living in, and make that all they really are. This trope tells us that career success is what the character has to live for, or else it has to be given up for family. There's no middle ground in there. This trope is usually aimed at someone who already has a family or want to create one. And if the audience is supposed to root for the career character, it's because they're living their dream. Now, the audience who has a family or wants to have one see themselves as different as the character. Not because they don't have dreams, we all have dreams, but because they have other things that they value. The dream isn't the only important thing to them. They want the family, they want love, they want to have freaking hobbies. But what does the narrative tell us then? You either have to burn yourself out and only live for your dream, or you won't be successful anyway, and you might as well focus on your other dreams and your other things that you value, like family. Showing success as this all-consuming is just another way to keep us small, to keep us inside a box, because it makes us believe that that which matters to us inside a box cannot survive outside of it. And that's garbage. That's not what we want to believe. That's not what we want to tell our audience. At least I don't want to tell that to my audience, and I don't want to continue this trope with this messaging. The other way this trope drives this point home is by villainizing success. In that case, the antagonist chooses their career and they become corrupted by it. They lose their family, they lose their friends, they lose their love, they lose everything else that was important to them. And the audience on the other side is then reminded that they made the right choice. It's a quick serotonin boost for staying inside that box. Now, don't get me wrong, choosing to dedicate yourself fully to a family and spend all your time into the pursuit of creating that family is absolutely valid, but that choice should never be fear-based. We want people to live as their fullest selves. We want people to be successful and still have a well-rounded life around the success. And our storytelling should reflect that. What to write instead? First off, be very clear why love and career are at odds here. Are they in different cities? Does the job require the character to stay single, in which case I guess they're a pop star or something? Do they not have any mental place outside the job? Once you have pinpointed that down, the problem stems from one of two places. Either the character's own limiting beliefs and the inflexibility that comes with that, or the unrealistic expectations the societal system the characters live in have placed on them. If it's the first one, is the character too attached to the vision they originally had of their lives? Or are they maybe scared of introducing a new relationship into their already busy schedule and busy life? Are they scared of being misunderstood? Are they unaware of how to even balance those two things? Are they completely prescribed to the you have to choose between love and career dichotomy and don't see the other options? Have they had bad examples or experiences in their past that makes them skeptical of it? And if they insist that their partner must choose the relationship as the highest priority, what are they avoiding to choose? What are they running away from? Because they have a life outside of their partner, but if they're insisting that the partner makes the relationship their whole life, your character is clearly neglecting other parts of their own life. A character that's solely focused on their love life has deeper-rooted problems to solve and to deal with, and trauma is probably attached to it. So what are those? Explore those. As always, we want to look at the complexities behind the trope and what harmful societal expectations it's promoting. Behind every trope, there are people that are acting in these similar ways because of what's expected to them. So really explore why your character feels the need and the pressure to choose between the two in the first place. If the problem stems from the second point, from societal systems, then make sure to really explore and honor that problem in your storytelling instead of becoming complicit to it. What are the capitalist pressures that are putting your character in that situation? Are they supposed to work 60-hour weeks and not really take vacations? And if so, how could that work differently? What would be a different option to that? Or can we really explore how that is the problem and not the character not valuing their relationship enough? If your character gives up their career because of those unhealthy expectations, don't just show them picking their relationship instead. Show them pursuing their original goals and dreams in a healthier way and what alternatives there would be. I think I mentioned The Devil Wears Prada as one of the examples for this trope, and while I do still think that the relationship is somewhat toxic in how it's presented, at this point they do actually pretty well because she still goes after her dreams in a healthy environment in the end. The point is to show that the problem is the system, not the character. And in most industries, there would be healthy alternatives to those pressures and to those overworking expectations. So let's think out of the capitalist paradigm and let's explore those options and have the character explore those options and realize that that is the problem, not them. And away from the problems around career, if your character wants to have a family but feels the need to make the family, place the family above everything else and just focus on that, where does that come from? So let's say they have a career that's not overworking them, that's great, but they feel like they need to 100% focus on the family. Where does that need come from? Maybe they want the family, but just on their own terms. And that's really exciting to explore. If your character does make a choice, be sure not to vilify the other choice or the other option. Instead, be specific about what they're rejecting and why. That way, it can either become an individual exploration or a criticism of society without condemning people that may have different choices and different views on this. But honestly, if you can, don't make them choose. There are so many ways to balance things out. There are so many ways to combine love and career. And I do think that the idea that we have to choose limits us inherently. Because truly, we can have it all. Maybe not exactly at the same time. Maybe it's going to take some adjusting and some learning and some balancing, but it is possible. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about this trope, where you've last seen it, and what kind of story you would like to see told more. If you like this video and want to give my channel a little boost for the YouTube algorithm, I'd highly appreciate if you click the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell. I make videos on topics like this one, writing tips, and storytellers live segments called Encounter Culture. Most weeks, although January is a little stressful on my side, but I'm trying to keep them coming. So yeah, we have a good time here. I hope to see you soon. See you next week. Have a wonderful start into the new year and all the good things. Bye. Let's get the set up, let's get the script up, let's get the script up, the script is not a set, no.